Good evening and welcome to the Fire Sprinkler CAD Basics Bootcamp. We are in week 4 and this is an introduction to the mCAD pre-calc process. I'm your host, Colby Stachwick. This week we're going to be getting into the actual layout of the fire sprinklers and we're going to be routing our piping system. We're going to be laying out the dots and connecting the dots. So let's go ahead and get started with our presentation. Let's see, where is my page turner? Here we go. So again, tonight's presentation, the pre-calc checklist. So this is an integral part of the mCAD process here. Want to let you know, behind the scenes helping me tonight before we get started, my beautiful wife, Monica, Chris Carrasco as well. If anybody needs help in Spanish, he is your man. And Martin Carl behind the scenes in the UK recording tonight. And just to make sure everybody is where they are supposed to be, this is the Fire Sprinkler CAD Basics Bootcamp. We are on week 4 of 8 weeks. So once this week is completed, we will be halfway through. And so you can see today is the pre-calc checklist as well as next week, because this is really like the meat and potatoes of system design. This is where it all happens. So we're going to take a couple weeks to get through here. If at any time, it feels like you're taking in so much information, it's overwhelming, feels like you're drinking water through a fire hose, well, we have a lot of opportunities that we have created to help you be successful with the content in this course. At this point, have you submitted your PDF for review, where you're at so far? We are here to help you. Your success is our success. So how can we help you be successful? We have many areas where you can come to get help. There is the community that we've highlighted before, where you can get help from your peers in the course. Also in the community, there's a section in there of meetups where we can meet on camera, just like we're doing here. And this Saturday, 10 a.m. Pacific, Chris Jansen has a live workshop that he's going to be continuing the theme that he's been doing for the last couple weeks. And he's going to be working in SketchUp. Now, SketchUp is a free program that is 3D. And it's a little bit more advanced than what we're doing in this course, but it's free. And so I recommend you check it out. And let me take care of that. I also, let's see. So this Saturday, he is going to be going over importing DWG files and roster images into SketchUp. And we can export to DWG as well, which is how we do our details with SketchUp for fire sprinklers. So if you go to the library section after you sign into Kajabi, and scroll down to the bottom, you should see this mCAD community, and that's where you can go and access. There's a forum where you can ask questions and post your work to get input from others. In addition to that, you should have access to the library, and the Fire Sprinkler CAD Basics Bootcamp is here, and this is where you go to access your full course material. There's much more than just the lecture here. There's many videos in there to help you be successful. In addition to that, this series of the 8-week course is on Thursday nights. And so every time that we meet here on Zoom, if you're able to make it this far, there is a Q&A that we will have immediately following the lecture. So that's another way we can help you out. So bring your questions if you're stuck somewhere in the course. I wanted to mention also on that workshop, although that I mentioned earlier with Chris Jansen, I know that the SketchUp thing is a little bit advanced compared to what we're doing and it's not totally related, but we do show how it is kind of like an extension of, ability to be able to use both of those together. And at the end, we always, allow time for questions, and there's also times for questions related to the course. It doesn't have to be just about what our workshop is. So feel free to bring any kinds of questions there. And in your storefront as well, during the boot camp, I have a calendar here available where you can sign up one-on-one time with me. If you're, whatever you need, whatever you're most comfortable with, choose one of these things that we have available to help you get unstuck if you're stuck. So one thing we want to remind everyone, you may not be used to sitting for long periods of time and being stationary, staring at a computer screen. We recommend, make yourself as comfortable as possible. And I cannot emphasize enough, you really want to have a scroll wheel mouse. You are going to struggle if you're trying to do this with like a pad on a laptop or something like that. Some people do like a trackball, so, that might be okay, but I recommend for everybody starting out a good scroll wheel mouse. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just has to work well. Now, we've been going through our process here. We started out, we looked at the layout checklist. We just basically got this PDF ready that we could start talking about. And then we, talked about how we redline. We go back and forth with these red lines, getting through that checklist. Now we're in this pre-calc checklist. There'll be some more red lines, and they might be, 2 or 3 to get through that checklist. So this is the one we talked about before, and then this is our job order report with those 2 things. We had a number of iterations. This is what your file should look like, where you have, several PDFs as you were working through the process. And ultimately, at this step in the course, this is where you should be at. And if, like I said, if you're having trouble getting to this point, let us know. We'll find a way to make you be successful, to help you walk through whatever. Usually it's just a small step that is hanging up people that are not familiar with these processes. And we are going over many new concepts quickly. So we are on the pre-calc checklist today. So the first things getting in, I want to go over this technician note. This is what I tell my guys. Technician note, this is the second checklist in the mCAD process. Here you draw in the sprinklers and the piping based on the layout review. Use the checklist to prepare the drawings for calculations. When you get to the calc nodes, do your best. It doesn't have to be perfect. You'll learn through the red line process. Now, if you're unsure about the nodes, just submit it without them and we'll review it together. Give it a try. You can do it. All right. So now, number 1 on our pre-calc checklist, we are going to be talking about labeling areas not requiring sprinklers. And our project for this course specifically is an NFPA 13D project, and we're going to be focusing on these 2 sections of code in NFPA 13D, which according to the 2019 edition in 8.3.2, sprinklers shall not be required in bathrooms of 55 square feet and less. And then in 8.3.3, sprinklers shall not be required in clothes closets, linen closets, and pantries that meet all of the following conditions. Now, the first one is that the area of the space does not exceed 24 square feet. The second is that the walls and ceiling are surfaced with non-combustible or limited combustible materials as defined in NFPA 22. And the gist of number 2 there is that if it has sheetrock, it's good. Okay. And there used to be a number 3. It was removed. I can't remember if it was the 2013 or 2016 edition when they took it out. But they also used to say that if the closet was over 3 feet deep, we automatically had to put a sprinkler in there, but that condition was removed, and so that's no longer a requirement. So I have a video that I'm going to walk you through on our project how we would go about doing this. And so I will see you guys on the other side of this video. All right, guys, we are getting started on our pre-calc checklist, and we are going to start with labeling areas that are not requiring sprinklers. So let's go ahead and switch over to our in CMS IntelliCAD. And the 2 main areas that we are concerned about with this project specifically are bathrooms under 55 or 55 square feet and under, and closets 24 square feet and under. And that's the two main things that come up in this project. It's also, quite frankly, the ones that come up over and over in general, like 90% of the time. There's a few other situations that will come up, but this will give you an idea of what we're dealing with, and these are the most common ones. So we are talking about, if we have our template here, you may recognize, you've been in the course, you should have your floor plan inserted when we did our, let's see, what was the layout checklist. And then we've got our site plan here. One thing that may help is if I turn that on. Okay, so it might make it a little easier to follow. So over here on the left, we have these many purple boxes. And this is just where I have organized many of the notes that we need for a 13D project. And close to the middle here, we have bathrooms and closets. I'm going to go ahead and start with closets. And what I want to mention here quickly also is that this right here says no sprinklers per 8.3.3. And then it has the number of square feet to mark of the closet. So 8.3.3 is the code reference in the 2019 edition of NFPA 13D. And that same code is in a slightly different location depending on the year edition you are using. So first thing you always want to do is verify the edition of NFPA 13 or 13D, whatever is the case, when you start a project. We do stuff all over these days, and like I said, Oregon's in 2019, California is in, I think it's 2022, if I'm getting that right, and then might be 21. And then like we did a project the other day in Colorado, and I guess from what I understand, over there, it can vary from city to city, even which year they're in. And so the one city that we were in, they were going by the 2021 or 2 edition. But apparently, you know, even in the same state, it can vary. We don't have that situation here in Oregon. Everywhere here, it's 2019. But depending on where you're at, this can change. And we're talking about this 8.3.3 number, that is where it is located in the book, because basically the biggest thing that happens when they change these year editions is they reorganize where things are at. And usually they don't radically change that much what's in there. It's really just kind of a restructuring. Probably spent too much time on that. I apologize, but it's useful to know where all these things come from. We're just kind of introducing you to these codes. So what we have here, all of these are notes for closets. And the pink here, or purple, magenta, I guess it is technically, is telling you this is a note for closets 24 square feet and less. And then these 3 notes are acceptable notes to use for our technicians. We just have them set up. You know, rather than teaching people to create a leader, which we will do when we get more advanced, this is just a way to get people started where they can just literally cut and paste these. And there's also another story along with that. One of the programs I was using for a long time to do this work, DraftSite. At the time it was free, and so I was putting up with the fact that it was free, but it did not do these leader lines the way that I wanted it to be, the way I had it set up in AutoCAD when I was using that. And so as a workaround, I could create the leaders and then mirror them. And so as in an effort to reduce all those steps in my template back then, I just started making all these pre-made notes that I could just drop and paste into my drawing. Now CMS and TeleCAD will do them the way I want to, and you know, we can go over that at a later time, but for the purpose of this course, we're providing you with this template, just trying to make everything as easy as possible so you don't have to know how to use the leader command, although that's going to be valuable and something you're going to want to learn in the future. It's important to know that right now we have these ones set up and you can just copy and paste these. And even if you wanted it to say something different, you can then just manipulate these just as easy. So I'm just going to hit the copy over here on the left. And actually, you know what? I don't want this one. I like to start with this one right here with no leaders first. And I think we'll be able to use that on all of them in this project. But if you can't, the idea of these notes, we don't want to cross walls ideally. And we also don't want to cross our piping. And so if we get into a situation like that, we'll use a leader so that we can avoid that. So I'm just going to drop it here in this first closet. And it really would be better probably if we didn't have a number in there initially. But we need to measure this now. And just so everybody's on board, I know we're going over things really quickly here. If you're only watching the lectures and you're not watching any of the side videos and you're feeling behind, you have to start practicing as soon as possible. Watch the more detailed videos on how to get your template open and then just start playing. You cannot progress until you just basically start fidgeting. The most difficult thing initially is just learning how to move around the CAD environment, zooming in and out. So if you're having trouble with any of that, get help with one of the opportunities that we have in the boot camp because you can get behind quickly, but everything in the course is recorded, and anytime, doesn't matter if you're still feel like you're stuck on week 1, if you come to week 8, we can still help you move forward. And you know, there's several opportunities in this course to help you be successful. How do we measure this area now? Well, we use the area tool. So you can see now, I just clicked on it. It's a little, there's a box with a rectangle and a circle. Down here, I could have just typed in area, you can see. But either way, I now have a tool that I can just click on all the corners. I'm using the endpoint snap. If you can see that red, maybe I can zoom in. That might be a little better. There we go. I get an endpoint snap to pop up where I want it. And then when I get all 4 corners, I hit enter. And down here at the bottom, it tells me that that is 17.09 square feet. Another thing, people let me know if this is distracting or not. When I click on the screen, it's showing you what mouse button I'm clicking right here. If I type anything in the keyboard, it's showing you what I'm typing. So that way, if I forget to describe anything, you can pause this video to capture, figure out exactly what I'm doing. All right, so 17.09, I just would round that up to 18. So we just go over and double click on our text to edit it and move our cursor to where we want it and change the pound symbol to an 18. Then I click out here and space to close it. If I would instead have pressed the enter on the keyboard there, you'll notice it will just, it's like I'm in a text editing program like Microsoft Word or something. It's just continuing the sentence, right? So I'm going to hit backspace. To complete these multi-line texts, you just click out of the box. There's only 2 types of text in these CAD programs, single line and multi-line. They are very similar, but they operate slightly differently. That's just something you'll need, just keep that in the back of your memory. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead and copy this to all the closets. Oops, what happened? I'm not sure what I did there. Select it, copy, pick a base point, move to my closet. I'm going to try and position it so it's not blocked by that line. I'm going to go to area, corner, 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 corner. Now, I've got all 4 corners. I could add more, but there aren't any. I have to hit enter on the keyboard to complete the command. And then again down here, it tells me 10.21. So I am going to round that to 11. Okay, we have more closets here. I think we just have one more to go. Well, there's 2 closets, but let me put this, oops, keep ortho on. F8 is ortho if you see me pressing that. Ortho is the button that locks in 90-degree intervals. If I press F8, it's locked in. To be able to move freely, I press F8 again to turn it off. So anyway, I had to do that to get this over here. Now, something of note about this closet here, this is a pantry, it's still a closet. It's over 3 feet deep, I can tell just by looking at it. In the old code, closets, even if they weren't 24 square feet, but they were over 3 feet deep, they had to have a sprinkler regardless. That's no longer the case, however. Let's see, what's my measurement? 18.3, so that's under 24. I'm going to go 19. Now this closet, because this is, you know, it's sample home that I drew back in 2022 in order to teach people without using somebody else's intellectual property or whatever. An architect, I drew this house. Basically what I'm getting at is I've designed a sprinkler system for this a million times. Maybe not a million. We're getting close. And so I just know that this closet is going to need a sprinkler. It's over 24 square feet. But say you weren't sure, you know, we just use the same command, go up here to area. You know, maybe I'm going to zoom in on that to make sure you can see what that icon looks like. That's the area command. You can see when I hover over it, the area comes up. And again, I could also just type that into the keyboard and hit enter. So I'm going to area, and then I'm going to go corner to corner to corner to corner. Now I'm going to hit enter. And we got 34 square feet. So that's more than 24. So it's got to get a sprinkler. So, and I guess, let me get my zoom off here, jumping ahead a little bit to mark. Well, it's not really jumping ahead. I usually, as I'm going through this, if I get to a closet that definitely needs a sprinkler, I put a line through it like that, and you'll see why in later on. I think it's 2 items ahead on the checklist. We'll explain those. All right, so that is all of my closets, I believe. But now we have some bathrooms. So let's go over here to our bathroom note. And I'm going to go ahead and use this one without the leaders. And I am going to drop it right here in this bathroom. And I'm going to measure from corner to corner again. Just zooming in and out. It's much easier to find the corner the more that you zoom in. You see there's a lot of things going on right here, a lot of lines. And I really want this corner right here. If I don't zoom in enough, I might accidentally grab that one. Now, you know, I guess the difference in my area would be minute enough, it wouldn't matter, but you know, sometimes it would matter depending on the situation. And so it's just a good idea to get it into good practice here. Just the point is use your endpoint snaps and zoom in really tight to easily grab those endpoints. Again, this goes back to learning, moving around, in and out, zooming in and out is the most critical skill to learn initially. just how to move around. So there is our label. Let's do the same tool here to measure. Oh, I already measured it. What was it? It was 38. Sorry, I'm getting lost here. Double click, change that to 38. All right, I need to copy this because we got more bathrooms over here. So we have a unique situation with this bathroom. I did this like this on purpose so we could explain this rule, basically. The way that NFPA 13D interprets bathrooms, this bathroom that we have here is basically broken up into 3 rooms. And bathrooms over 55 square feet require sprinkler, but under 55 square feet do not require sprinkling. And the way that this is broken up, we're going to have 3 rooms under 55 square feet. But I think if they weren't broken up the way that they are, it would be big enough to require a sprinkler. So it's kind of an interesting situation. Even if the room, like the code specifically says, even if there's only a toilet, it's still a bathroom. So that would be talking about this area right here. I'm just going to drop that there for a second and go ahead and measure. Go from corner to corner to corner to corner. Oops, I missed. And I'm not even going to stress it because, like I said, we're just a ½ inch out of square from the sheetrock. So it's not going to make our number off that much. Still, it says 16 square feet. So I'm going to double click on here and 16, click outside the text box. Now, I want to make this look better. So if I double click on it, I could grab this grip right here, bring it in. I like the look of that. And then click outside of it again. I'll select it. Now, you notice I'm moving this over here, but I'm clicking over here on the left more. The reason is because there's nothing going on over here. I know I want to move this up and to the right a little bit. And if I click here, when I move up and to the right, there's nothing around that my endpoint snap or my midpoint snap or my center snap might accidentally stick to. If I was to do it here, you can see it's sticking all over the place. My midpoint, let me zoom in so you can see that. All over the place. There's a midpoint down there. There's a midpoint of this arc. There was some sort of weird endpoint there. Oh, that's an intersection. So there's just all sorts of points that could really gum me up. Like, for example, let's just try it. Say I didn't get there's a point, and then I want to move it to here. And I think, oh, I'm going to click there, and it's going to be right where I want it. Oh, but what happened? It moved somewhere weird. Why is that? Well, it's because of my endpoint snaps. If you're not paying attention, you'll snap to something. And so to avoid that, what I will do, I'm not sure if the zoom is helped. Yeah, okay, I don't want the zoom right now. So I'm going to click on it again. And so instead of clicking in here where there's all these opportunities to accidentally stick to something, I'm going to go over here where there's nothing. And then when I move it, it's just, I can move it freely. And I can drop it there and it goes where I expect. Okay? That's when I know when a lot of guys are starting out, they struggle with that, understanding not where you have to. I guess the idea of having 2 points whenever we copy something, a lot of people struggle with initially, moving or copy. You have a base point and an end point, and the base point does not have to be anywhere near the object. And lots of times there's good reason to not have it anywhere near the object that you're moving or copying. So I'm going to copy this over, let's go to the shower. And I'm going to go ahead and pull that back apart to where it was. See if it'll fit down here. Look okay. I didn't quite get it where I wanted. So I'm going to move it again. There we go. That looks good. So now let me measure my area. Now, even if this shower, there's, ways that you can do this. Sometimes it might be, there's just like a really hard, you may say it'd be really hard to get a sprinkler in here. And so we want to make this so it's divided like this. Well, it doesn't actually even have to have a door on it necessarily. It just needs to have a lintel, which NFPA 13D has a definition of. It's basically like a header over a door. You have to have a piece coming down from the ceiling that I want to say it has to come down, I think it's 12 inches, but I'm not sure. And you can basically treat that like a wall. So hit enter. My area is 22 square feet. It was 21 and some change, but I'm rounding up. Always be conservative. So you can see on the right, I hit the escape button often. It's when it's showing you the buttons I'm pressing. I always forget that I'm doing that, but that's, I know, a helpful thing that I forget to translate. I'm seeing it happen on the screen, and I'm realizing that I don't say that enough, that every time I want to get out of a command, I hit the escape button. Say you click on this to edit it, and then you click out and you're done. Oh, that wasn't a good example. But it's often the case that, say I'm just in there, I can hit escape to get out of it. There's just situations, I just keep my hand anchored on the escape button, because for example, I was speaking with the student the other day. He was having some problems, and this is often the case with new students. They will say, for example, I had this selected, and then I moved to this part of the screen. Even though it's not on the screen, it's still selected. So if I hit delete right now, and then go back over there and look, I just deleted it. So you have to be very aware of what you have selected all the time before you go into a move command. You think you may have just one thing selected, but you may have something else from previous that you've forgotten about. So before you go ahead and start your new command, I just automatically am hitting escape to make sure I don't have anything that I forgot about selected. Let's go ahead and get this area. All right, that one is 41 square feet. So you can see these numbers, how they would have added up. They definitely would have been over 55. But because they're all individually under that, we don't need a sprinkler. All right, so that is it for our project for areas not requiring sprinklers. We will see you guys in the next video. All right, guys, I forgot to bring back my slides. There we go. I want to mention we had a comment. Owen mentioned that he thinks it's 18 inches for the lintels, and I think he's right for that, if you're wondering. So just talking about basically, and you can separate a room if you need to make a room smaller, like you can't, you don't have enough water to supply water to multiple sprinklers. You can divide up a room so it can be covered by individual sprinklers with lintels coming down 18 inches from the ceiling, and they don't even have to be, basically you just build them out of framing and then wrap them with sheetrock is all that they're required. But I've actually been involved in projects where we solved problems like that. So that video we were talking about specifically rooms that don't have sprinklers in them. This next one, outlining areas to avoid near heat sources, is more specific to areas around an item, but it's not the entire room. Like we need to have a sprinkler in there, but we don't want to be too close to this. And the reason for all of these items on this list is that they're hot. And so we don't want to have an accidental activation of our sprinkler. And if you guys can see this, I know it's small, but as we switch back and forth, I'm just moving left to right on this same piece of text here. But the distance here on the first item is side of an open or recessed fireplace. It's 36 inches you have to normally be from the side. The front, you have to be 60 inches or 5 feet. Well, if we change to the next, if I slide over here on my slide, we go from an ordinary temperature sprinkler to an intermediate temperature sprinkler. Well, we can reduce that space to 12 inches on the side and 36 inches in the front. And there's lots of times with fireplaces, especially where we have to do that because they're just like in the middle of the room where you need a sprinkler. And so we end up having to use an intermediate temperature one a lot. But we don't have a fireplace in this project, particularly if we go down to item number 4 and 5. 4 is kitchen range and wall oven. This project has a combination oven range, so it's same thing. The distances for both of those are the same. It's 18 inches, and if we needed to, in a strange situation, it comes up every once in a while, we can reduce that distance to 9 inches by using a higher temperature sprinkler. But so now we get a shorter video on, we're basically going to be putting it around the oven, just marking out where we want our safe zone to keep the sprinkler away. So I will see you guys on the other side of the video. All right, so number 2 on our pre-calc checklist is to outline areas to avoid near heat sources. So let's go ahead and switch over to our CAD program and take a look. So this is where we left off with number 1 for labeling areas not requiring sprinklers. If we go back over here to these magenta boxes, this would be near the top. The very top is our title block. Just below that, we have this notes for NFPA 13D, fireplace, which we don't have a fireplace in this one. We have only an oven or a cooktop, which it is a combination oven range. So we are going to take, this is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. And that is just so that it can be adjustable in size. We like to put this note with it. I'm going to go copy. And I'm going to bring it over here. Notice I have ortho off, or F8, so it can move freely. If I were to hit ortho, it would get locked in this 90-degree interval. But so I'm going to set it up here to begin with. Just click in the space up there. Now, if I go back real quick, I'm going to bring over this note as well. I think we'll use this one. And the main reason I usually don't add these until after we added the pipe, the note, that is. I add the dashed lines to make it clear, just to avoid this area when I'm laying out the sprinklers. But generally, I don't add the note till after I lay out the sprinklers in case I don't have a lot of room for it or whatnot. But this is a standard size oven, and this note is the size of a standard size oven, so you don't really need to mess with changing it. It'll be like slightly off, maybe, but like less than an inch. I'm going to turn on ortho. I'm just drawing a construction line on the mCAD reference layer. I started on the corner of the oven, and I'm just going to type in 18 and enter. That's going to make me an 18-inch line. I could continue drawing lines if I wanted to, but I'm going to hit escape. And now I could either draw another line from here, or copy this one, you know, I would end up with the same result. Let me do copy just to, let me demonstrate that. If you guys haven't seen this yet, make sure you watch our short detailed videos on the copy command. I like to select the object first, then hit copy. Now it's asking me down here in the command line, it's saying specify base point. So I am going to snap to this endpoint. Can you guys see that? That little red square pops up. So I'm going to click on it. And now I have this thing. You can see it's stuck to moving with me. It's moving straight up because I have ortho on, F8. If I pressed F8, you can see it moves over here. Now, because I'm going to snap to this endpoint, it doesn't matter if I have ortho on or not. If I zoom in there, you guys can see that I'm looking for that little red box to pop up. And when I do, it says endpoint right next to my crosshairs. So I'm going to click, and it put one right there. And you notice I still have it. I could continue to copy it if I wanted to. But I'm just going to hit escape to get out of that. And so we drew an 18-inch line. Oops, let me get out of this zoom for you guys. Okay. So that we could reconstruct this thing on there. Basically, it's just in these pieces so that if the oven isn't the exact size of this, you can adjust it. So there's these endpoints already in them. And we just place it there. You can see like, here's the fraction of an inch. It's off. No one would even be able to see that when it's printed. But if I wanted to, I can just select this line and then that blue grip comes up. Let me zoom in a little bit. I can put my crosshairs inside that box. You can see it becomes red. And I click and now I'm stretching the line. I can just stretch it up to this other endpoint. You can see I'm snapping with that red box. And so then it just sticks to the endpoint of that purple line. So now we have a clear outline. You know, don't put sprinklers right here because it's hot and it might set off the sprinkler. And so we just, because I don't know yet if there's going to be room inside here, I'm going to set this just outside the building and bring the arrow down like this. And I'm doing a midpoint snap to that arc. You see the midpoint triangle snap represents the midpoint. If I go down here to the end of the arc, the end point will pop up. More towards the middle, the midpoint snap pops up. Even though I'm down here on the arc, when I click, it goes to that midpoint. All right, let me get out of this crazy zoom. That's okay. Yeah, that's it. That's our only heat source of concern in this project. But basically, that gives you the idea. We are just marking these lines around. We have them already set up. You know, it's 18 inches away. We drew that 18-inch line. This is an 18-inch arc that I already have drawn, and we're just dropping it on this line that puts us in the correct position 18 inches away from the oven. Couldn't be too much simpler. But we do a similar thing. You saw the note when we have a fireplace. There are other heat sources that we have to take into consideration that are on this chart in table 7.5.6.3 in NFPA 13D, and we mention those less often. That's why we don't have them set up in our template, but perhaps we should. It's just trying to find a balance between keeping too much stuff on here and keeping it, you know, easy to find the things that we need most of the time. But anyway, that's it for, let's see, what was this? Yes, outlining areas to avoid near heat sources. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next video. All right. So we are at number 3, system layout, sprinklers and piping. This is basically, you know, this is an 8-week course on the basics of fire sprinkler design. And really, in the next video, we're doing the design of the system. It's like, that's the design, but we need all of these other 8 weeks of information to basically get all of the other information in there that's required for, getting a permit, those types of things. But as you'll see, as we're going to go forward, we're going to lay out our sprinkler system. So the number one thing that we do, number one, place your sprinklers in the areas where they're required. So as you see in the video, we're going to kind of break our areas into separate rectangles. Our sprinkler spacing design from our job order report is that we're using a Senju sprinkler, concealed sprinkler that has a 16 by 16 spacing, meaning we designed to a 16 foot by 16 foot by 16 foot square. So number one, we're just going to be placing the sprinklers. Number two, we're going to align the sprinklers with the building structural components. You see in this picture here, we have piping between a floor joist. We're running predominantly through the floor joist channel to avoid drilling as much as possible. We can't completely avoid it. The third step after we place the sprinklers, align them as much as possible with the structural components, is number three, we connect the dots. We run the piping through the structure to minimize field labor, minimize drilling and whatnot. If you look at this picture, you can kind of tell, there's obviously free space if we go between the joists, but if we go through them, we got to do some drilling. And then, it's hard to tell from this picture, but, there's there's a coupling in the middle of that. The reason there's a coupling is because it's too hard to stuff that long of a pipe through those holes. And so it just increases the difficulty on many levels in the field in installation when we fight against the structure. There's going to be some of it that's inevitable. We can't avoid it completely, but we're going to do everything we can to align up with the structural components to save labor in the field. But so this is the meat and potatoes. This is the next video, and it's a little bit longer, guys. So we are not going to have a break between the Q&A. After this, we're going to come back, and I just have a handful more slides, and then we will go straight into Q&A. So look forward to seeing you guys on the other side. All right, guys, we are continuing on with our pre-calc checklist. And we're moving on to system layout. We're going to start by laying out our fire sprinklers, and then we are going to connect the dots, so to speak, and draw in our piping. So let's switch over to our CAD program. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm in the mCAD reference layer here up at the top. Let me zoom in a little bit. So this is my layers here, and the layer that I am in is mCAD reference. And so that means that everything I do will not print. And let's see, can't see, but I have over on this side, my mCAD, I have mCAD standard and mCAD sprinkler as options in here, which we'll be using. Next week, we'll be showing you how we dimension our pipe with the mCAD sprinkler. But right now I have it set to mCAD standard. And let me turn me back on. All right, and so get my zoom off. Now, with that being said, I'm in the reference layer and I have the mCAD standard dimension style set. I'm going to throw in some linear dimensions. This is the linear dimension tool. I could also type dim linear in the command line. So I am going to be zooming in, and you'll notice I have, when I get close to the end of this line here, the corner, this square, red square pops up, and near my cursor, the crosshairs, it says endpoint. And so if I click, it is going to do an endpoint snap right into the corner there. And so up here at the top of the screen is where I have my object snap settings set. And so I have endpoint, midpoint, and center set all of the time when I'm doing sprinkler drawings. And if you think about it, endpoint, midpoint, and center kind of makes sense because we're basically, like I said, placing dots, the sprinklers. So I need the center of the sprinklers to be able to grab, and then we're connecting those with pipes, connecting the dots. And so endpoints and midpoints of lines is very handy for the types of procedures we're dealing with fire sprinklers. So I keep those set all the time. This is one thing I like about CMS and TeleCAD. It keeps them highlighted in blue to let you know that those are the ones you have set. Most of these other programs do not have that feature. But I guess I can show you if you're using something else what you may have. If you go hold down Shift and right click, you have the same, all of these things here. It shows you what the options are. You can go into settings, and zoom is probably not the best, but here is what you would have in AutoCAD, DraftSite, the like, BricsCAD. You have this menu, and you can see that we have endpoint, center, midpoint, and somehow just now node got set. I don't know what's up with that. I'm going to turn that one off. I'm going to hit OK, and I just had another window pop up on this other monitor, so I'm going to close that real quick. So let me get back to it. I'm just going to start dropping a bunch of dimensions that I know will be helpful. You wouldn't necessarily know this right now because you've never done this, maybe, or maybe if you're a sprinkler contractor, you can think of why these dimensions would be useful. There were some dimensions, if you remember from a couple weeks ago or a week ago, can't remember. I think it was 2 weeks ago on the layout checklist. There was some dimensions that came with this plan that we removed. And, if you wanted to leave those on there while you were figuring this part out, that would be, reasonable. But those dimensions usually are not as good as these ones that I'm placing now. I just know exactly where. Basically, I'm breaking. Oops, I've already got one here. I don't know why I did. I don't need to know that it's 11'4" twice. I'm breaking all these areas into rectangles. That's how I'm thinking about it. We're covering, if you remember from your worksheet, the job order report, when we were filling out the sprinkler information for the head legend, title block. We were looking, there was a send you. I don't know, maybe we didn't even fill that out yet, but we were putting the title on there, and there was some information on there associated with it, with the sprinkler. And it was a send you sprinkler. If you look at your job order report, it's a 4.9 K factor. This has to do with the size of the hole. It's roughly a 1/2 inch, and we're doing the calculations. We're going to use that number in the calc program. The important thing for what we're doing is that on that job order report, it said we are using that sprinkler at 16 by 16 foot spacing. And so that's 16 foot squares. One thing we do come up once in a while against is people thinking that it should be a circle, like 16 foot diameter. And, that's kind of reasonable to think because, of course, it does come out of the sprinkler spraying in a circle. But the circle is ginormous. That's not even a word, but if you look at the spray pattern of the sprinkler, it's spraying onto the walls, and you can see the arc of the circle. high up on the wall, close to where the wall meets the ceiling. And so there is a circle, but it's an incredibly large circle. In fact, it's much larger than the square that we're designing to. But that circle is taken into consideration if we've had jurisdictions that are confused and thought we needed to add sprinklers into the corners. But, you know, everybody's got to start somewhere with their knowledge. Let's see, is that everything I need? I believe so. So the next step for me is actually in a couple videos ago, I think I drew a diagonal line across here and I forgot and accidentally deleted it, but I told you we would get into why I do that in the future. And so now we are going to get into that. So I'm just going to go ahead and draw a diagonal line across every room that needs a sprinkler or sprinklers. Every room or area that I broke into rectangles when I was doing those dimensions that I just laid out. Something to note, this hallway, this is just like a linen shelf or a linen closet in here on a shelf. If we were to put the sprinkler over here, you would end up with what's called a shadow area by NFPA, and up to a 5 square foot shadow area is legal, but we will place our sprinkler so that it sprays into that. Let's see, just keep continuing on. Now there's no wall here, but I'm just gonna kind of treat it like a separate box area just because there's an elevation change and it's gonna pretty much work out anyway because I want to go the other direction just with the spacing. Let's just keep going here. I'm just moving along. This is like all of these things are just methods that I have developed to where I don't have to think and just move the project forward with as little thinking as possible, like creating process that removes having to think. That probably seems strange, but if you want to do a lot of these, you know, having a system with checklists and systems that move you forward, I can't iterate enough how much it speeds you up. I run into this all the time. People don't think that that's the case when I go new offices and work with people, but people just don't realize how much time they waste thinking about the same things over and over and over again on one project. So I've laid out all the areas where we need sprinklers, put this diagonal line. So now over here, I have this box right here that has sprinkler symbols. And I'm going to select that box and I'm going to go over here to the copy command. It's asking me for a base point. Now, this is where my center snap comes in. It's a little bit counterintuitive. You may want to go to the center, but you actually touch the edge of the circle. And you see that there's that circle symbol popped up in the little red circle. If I zoom in a little more, you can see it better. If I back off, right when I touch it, that little red circle pops up in the middle. And also it says center right next to my crosshairs. And so if I click, I have it now from the center. Now I'm going to go and I'm just going to drop it on all of these lines at the midpoint. And so because I have endpoint, midpoint, and center set, Now there's no center on a line. There's only endpoint and midpoint. So on the line, if I'm closer to the middle of it, you see this triangle pops up. If I'm closer to the end, you'll see this square pops up at the other end. If I go to the other end, here as long as I'm closer to the middle, it's the triangle. If I move down, eventually the square pops up. So whichever I'm closer to, it's going to grab. So even if I'm touching it way over here, it's going to snap to where the triangle is. So I'm going to click, and you'll see it dropped it right there where the triangle is. So I'm just going to go through, I'm going to turn that zoom off. I'm just going to go through and drop this on every single one of these lines on the midpoint real quick. And so this is really just kind of a method to disperse these evenly throughout. I still need to do some work here. Of course, like I said, I believe I said, hopefully I mentioned, you know, the lights are right in the center there, so that's not ultimately going to work out. But I'm going to select one of these magenta lines. I don't know if you guys have been introduced to this yet, but I want to show you the isolate layer command. Oh yeah, when we were doing the drawing cleanup, we looked at that. But here it is again. I have it up here, but if I zoom in, this is what the button looks like. And you can see that when I hover over it, it says layer isolate. Right next to it is layer unisolate. So I have this magenta mCAD reference line selected. So if I go up here to layer isolate, it's going to be everything that is on that layer. And I just want to get rid of these diagonal lines. I want to keep my dimensions. So I'm just going to go through here and grab them. It's a lot easier though when there's nothing but these magenta items. And hit delete. And then layer unisolate. Okay, so we have the heads dispersed, but I don't know if you remember, but I mentioned the spacing was 16 by 16. And here we've got a box that's 18 foot wide. So we need to spread them out in here. We need two heads in here. Now, if I just select that head, I don't know if you saw that. Let me zoom in. I'm gonna hit escape. If I select the head, I just click on it. This grip comes up in the middle. I can put my cursor right in the middle of that grip. You see it turns red. I can click, and now I have the head, and I'm in the stretch command. I can move it in any direction. I want to press F8 on my keyboard. That's going to lock it in 90-degree increments, okay? So I want to go this direction. Now, okay, let me back up. The sprinkler is 16 by 16 spacing. That's the maximum. There is also a minimum with these sprinklers. And the minimum is 8 feet from each other. So we probably don't have the room to be 16 feet apart in this room. If you think about it, there's the oven right there that we got to be out of. Remember, we marked that out in a previous video. That's a hot zone. We don't want a sprinkler right there. We might accidentally activate it. So because of that, I am going to copy this over based on the minimum spacing of 8 feet. And so I'm going to copy it to the left 4 feet, or I'm sorry. I grabbed that grip and I'm stretching it or moving it to the left 4 feet first. So I'm just going to type in 48, enter. And you see that moved it to the left 48. Now I'm going to use the copy command. And it's asking me for a base point. I'm going to click in space right here, just this blank area. And I'm going to move to the right. I still have ortho on, so it stays in a perfect perpendicular plane, or perfectly, what would you not? Yeah, travels perpendicularly, I guess that's right. Perfectly straight line. And I just point it the direction I want, and then on the keyboard I type 8, and then I put the foot symbol, and I put enter. And there it is. I still have it. I could copy it more times if I wanted, but I don't need to, so I'm going to hit escape. So this area is pretty well covered now. I'm going to go over here and do the same thing. Select it, grab that grip, move it to the left, 48 inches. Now, it's assuming I'm going to enter inches, so if I just type 48, that's pretty fast. If I go copy and I want to put 8, I have to enter the foot symbol to tell it to, so it differentiates. Otherwise, it would do 8 inches. Now, you'll notice that this is 16-foot 2 box, and that's a little bit bigger than what our coverage is allowed. But to the sprinkler, it's less than that. It's only 14 foot. And where this sprinkler stops, right out here, 2 inches before the edge, this ceiling is higher, and where this is sitting, it's lower. And so this is going to spray out 8 feet this direction. And it's not going to be a problem. We got plenty of coverage. In fact, now that I think about it, we're 8 foot 1 off of this wall because I centered it. I bet you anything. And we really want to be 8 foot maximum. So we should check that real quick. We're an inch too, yep, I was right. We're an inch too far off the wall. So I'm going to do a right to left box select. And I'm going to type S for stretch. And I could click on it there. I could type out the rest of the word at this point, or I could just hit enter. Because all these things with S came up, and that was the first one on the list because S is for stretch back when it first came out with the hotkey, I guess. So it's the first thing that comes up when you hit S always. So S enter is stretch. And I'm just going to click out in space now with a blank area. I know I want to go down. I have ortho on, so it moves in a straight line, and I need to go 1 inch. I've moved it, much further than that, but I'm just moving it in the direction, and then I type 1 for 1 inch on the keyboard, enter, and now it's 8 feet from the wall. And again, it's 2 inches from this change in ceiling elevation, but this sprinkler is at a 1 foot lower ceiling elevation and is completely covering this space. All right, so I am going to, these are kind of locked in place here because they're 8 feet off that wall. So I'm going to draw a line from this sprinkler this direction, just kind of end it wild right here. And I'm going to take this sprinkler and I'm going to select this grip in the middle, and I'm going to go and use the perpendicular snap. And then I'm going to touch this line, and it's just going to slam it perpendicular into that line. Again, one thing you have to watch, I have this head selected. When I go over here, I still have it selected. So if I hit copy or something like that, or erase, it would be affected. So I'm going to hit escape. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now, this is going to be a pipe. At this point, I can just select it, and I can go to my drop down here and go to the mCAD pipe layer, and now it's a pipe. There's lots of different ways to do that. I could have drawn it. I could have changed the pipe layer before I started drawing it. I generally just kind of keep it in the mCAD reference layer for the most part. Because when I'm doing stuff in there, if I forget and leave it, it's not going to mess things up. It's not going to print. So I need to catch these two heads. Okay, and one thing, I better back up. You may be wondering, why did I decide to run the pipe that direction? So one of the things with this sprinkler design is that the building, pretty much the structure, for the most part, dictates the way that we want to run our piping. There's just a way that's easier, one way or another. If this was a 2-story building, where the direction that the floor joists are traveling on the first or on the second floor would be the ceiling of your first floor. So you'd want to travel between the floor joists parallel to them as much as possible to minimize drilling. Well, this is a 1-story ranch home, and we're running piping, we're laying on the top these little rectangles with the X's in them. This represents a 2x4. The sheetrock here is screwed into that. There's insulation in between here and on top of our piping. But our piping is resting right on the top of this 2x4, which this is a piece of this entire roof truss assembly. This is what would be called the bottom chord. And so we rest our piping along the top of the bottom chord. And we predominantly run our piping this direction. And we'll have to have a little rise up here and then continue across. Come across here, drop down, and then continue across. And so this cross section is a slice right here. So it's looking right here where I'm putting this piping. And so I'm drawing it, laying across the top of those bottom chords of the trusses in this roof. Now we need to get to these sprinklers over here. One thing I'm going to do, there's a light right here like we were talking about earlier. And so we are doing 16 by 16 spacing, which means that we can be a maximum of 8 feet off of a wall. So now right here, you notice I clicked in an area where there's 2 things, and not all CAD programs do this, but CMS and IntelliCAD does, and BricsCAD, I believe. Anyway, it's giving me the option. It's like, which one did you mean? And I meant this mCAD sprinkler. I didn't mean the text. And so I want to select that head, and I'm going to grab it by this grip. And now I'm going to move it down to this corner. And now I'm going to grab the grip again. And I'm going to just move it in the up direction, and I'm going to type 8 feet, enter. Now I'm going to grab it again, and I'm going to type 8 feet, enter. So I'm maxed out my spacing off of, from this corner. Now I'm going to select this line, I'm going to grab this grip, and I'm going to bring it past while I have ortho on, so it's staying straight. And now I'm going to draw a line from the center of this sprinkler, perpendicular to that line. Now I'm going to hit escape. Now I forgot that I was in the mCAD reference layer, and I want that to be a pipe. So I could select the line and change it like I did last time. But I'm going to show you another command here that's handy. We zoom in here, this little on. Now this thing has slightly different names in all the CAD programs. But if I hover over it here in IntelliCAD, it's copy entity formatting. I believe in DraftSight it's called property painter, but it's something like that. I'm going to click on it, and the command line says match properties, and I believe that's what it's called in AutoCAD. So I'm going to, the first thing it's asking me, select entity to copy properties from. And so I want to copy the properties from this pipe that's already here. Okay, so now it's saying select entities to copy properties to. All right, so I want to copy those properties to that line, and so it did it. So that's another useful tool. So now I can just go grab this line, and there's a blue grip right there that I can grab, and I can just pull it back, and I can use the endpoint snap. You see the red square that pops up there, endpoint of this line, and so I just snapped it to the end of that. Now I'm going to hit escape to deselect it. All right, now in a similar way to how I did with that head, I'm going to take this one and I'm going to bring it up to the corner. And I'm going to come down 8 feet. And you can see from that angle, I'm spraying into this closet, no problem. But I can't be in the wall like this. So I'm going to grab the grip and I'm going to come out this direction. Now, the code says that we can be, actually it might even be 4 inches, but I want to say it's 6 inches from the wall. But 6 inches, this head symbol that we're using in the drawing is overly exaggerated. It's like 10 inches across. And the actual deflector, I mean, these are concealed sprinklers with a concealed plate. The cover plate's like a little over 3 inches round. But the deflector itself, once that cover plate falls away and the deflector drops down, it's only like 1 inch in diameter. You know, so this symbol is 10 inches on the drawing so we can see it visibly because we're making the house so small. So all of this is to say that I generally always move the heads at least 9 inches off the wall to make it clear that it's far enough off the wall. It doesn't have to be 9 inches in reality. It's just that that's the number that we use so that it doesn't get questioned by the plan reviewer. So again, I drew a purple line. I'm going to use match properties. Okay, there we go. So I got like this lower portion laid out here. Now, I need to deal with this area up here. One thing, what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to, like I did in that other room down below, I went to this corner, then I maxed out the 8 feet in 2 directions. Let me show you another way to do that. I could also do a line from the sheetrock here. There's a good midpoint I could grab, or I could go and use this command and do nearest. And then I can touch the sheetrock at anywhere and it's going to stick right there. And then with ortho on, making an arrow going straight down, I'm going to type 8 feet and hit enter. Now I'm still in the line command by default. And so I'm going to run a line to the right. I'm just going to run it wild out the side for now, straight across. I'm going to delete that. So I just drew a line 8 feet down and then straight across the building. And I'm going to now select this and make that a pipe. And now I'm going to select my head and go perpendicular. Yeah, I'm going to select these and do it as well. I'm grabbing the grip, using this. Just when you grab the grip and move them, that's automatically goes into the stretch command. Now, I could, if I want to minimize pipe and stuff, I could max out the 8 feet off of this wall as well and bring this over here. There's just so many ways to do this. Let me show you another way. I think I've shown you like 2 so far. So that's 5'8". We want to go to 8 feet, so that would be 2'4". So I'm going to do a right to left box select. Now notice the difference when I do that. Let's zoom in. Right to left, I get a dashed box with the green inside. Maybe a little bit different depending on your program, but there's always a difference between right to left versus left to right. You see now, instead of the dashed line, I've got a solid line and it's blue inside. It's doing those differences to let me know, to remind me that there's a difference between the two. When I do left to right, you'll notice it only selected the head. But if I hit escape and do right to left, it selected all of these things. So the difference is when you go left to right, it only selects everything within the box. When you go right to left, it selects everything within the box as well as everything that intersects the dashed line. So that's why it picked up the pipe, the blue pipe, and the magenta dimension. So with the 3 of these things selected in this manner, I can now, let me back out of my zoom. I can now go to the keyboard and type S for stretch. It's right here on my screen. It popped up, so I'm going to click it. Now it's asking me for a base point. I'm going to click here. Now it's important that I have ortho on. If I turn ortho off, you'll see I can really mess up my line and have it all crooked. We don't want that. We want ortho on because we want nice perpendicular straight lines. Okay, now I said, if you remember, that we were at 5'8", and to get to 8 feet off the wall, we need to go to the right 2'4". So I can type in 2'4", enter, and now we're 8 feet off the wall. So trying to get across there that there are just, I think I showed you about 3 different methods to accomplish the same thing of getting this sprinkler to this position in various rooms, of getting it 8 feet from certain walls. There's just lots of different ways we can do that, different methods we can use to align our heads. Now, we've got a little bit of a tricky situation here. We've got a trade ceiling. So notice there is a 10-foot ceiling in the center and a 9-foot ceiling on this outer ring. And so this is a lower ceiling than this. And it's pretty common to have these, at least in this area these days, like in a master bedroom, that type of thing. And they often will have a ceiling fan here as well. And we seldom get the locations of lights, electrical, ceiling fans, that type of thing on a house plan. So we just kind of, that's like a good reason to not put it right in the middle. Like, we could cover this room with 16 by 16 spacing by putting a head right in the middle, but like, there's going to be a ceiling fan there or some sort of light, chandelier, whatever. So because this outer ring is lower, I'm actually going to do 2 heads to kind of straddle this fan that they're likely going to have there. And I'm going to put each head out in this lower part of the ceiling. And so I want to find the midpoint of this space. And there's lots of different ways that I could do that. But the simplest thing is if I just draw a line from anywhere on this line, I got midpoint pops up, endpoint pops up here. Let me just do this midpoint, and then I come over across and I want to do any point on this side. And there's an endpoint that snapped for me or popped up. That's like the first thing that's coming immediately. But let me show you, if there wasn't one, I could go up here and select the nearest snap, and then anywhere on this sheetrock I could click, and it really doesn't matter where. I'm going to click right here. We just need a line crossing these two. And now when I create another line and snap to the midpoint, I am exactly at the halfway point of the wall and the edge of this outer ring of this tray. So now I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to do the endpoint. And let's see what we snapped to. The endpoint up there. That's good. Again, line from the midpoint. And I'll just draw it down. And now we have, again, these are construction lines. They won't print. I'm going to grab this grip in the middle. And I'm going to go perpendicular to this line I just drew. Now I'm going to go to the copy command, and I'm going to put one on this side as well, perpendicular. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete these construction lines. We are not going to want this pipe going across with this elevation change. I mean, we could. It doesn't really matter. It would be the dealer's choice of the installer. But we're going to show you what that looks like when we go up and over this. But for this, I want to go around on the tray. I don't know why, just to show you something different, I guess. So I went perpendicular. I don't want to do perpendicular. I'm going to go from this head. I'm going to go down, south. Let's see. I don't know if you can see this, but I've got this thing on my screen. It's telling me I'm at 4'11" right there. So if 5 foot is 60 inches, if I just type in 60, enter, there I am. Now I'm going to go out this way. I'm going to go a little bit wild. And I'm going to draw another line from the center of this head, perpendicular to this line. Select this one again, grab the grip, and then bring it back. Now I'm going to go type in TR for trim. Trim pops up right there. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to click on this line right here. Now I'm going to right click because I only have one cutting edge to select. Now I'm going to cut that on it, that line. And I'm going to do match properties real quick. Touch that pipe and select these. Okay, I like that. Now this one in the closet, we can bring that down a little closer. Let's go 24. Let's bring it a little closer to the door as well. Like right there is good. And and let's match properties. Okay, we've got almost all our piping laid out. Let's see. Let's go. Well, I wonder if I can just, we need to, this is our tank and pump. That is our water supply for this system. And I'm going to grab, over here we have this riser assembly symbol. I'm going to select that. It has a grip similar to our sprinkler symbol, but I'm going to copy it over. And I'm going to drop it on this circle. Again, we touch the circle. And we wait for the red dot to come up. and then we click and it snaps to that red dot. So this is that blue X represents our pipe coming up vertically from the pump right here. I'm just going to go ahead and change to my mCAD pipe layer. I'm going to draw a line from the center of that, go perpendicular to our line right here, and grab this line, grab the grip and pull it in. And I'm going to grab this line and pull it down to here to connect these. That looks pretty good. I wonder, I'm going to select this head and I'm going to go over here, hit perpendicular. I'm going to select it again and I'm going to go 8 feet, enter. Oh, I went past that line. Okay, so I'm just going to grab it and go right onto that line now, perpendicular. So that's good. All right. So we can move this off of our piping. I wonder if I could put it down here. Does that look good? I don't really care about this room label for a sprinkler drawing, but that looks better, I guess. So that's it. That's our piping. You know, like 8 weeks for what we just did in, I don't know, what was it, 20 minutes? I mean, that's basically the gist of designing the sprinkler system. Everything else is, you know, next video, we're going to get into adding dimensions to this piping and basically everything else from this point on. Well, everything on the pre-calc checklist is to get it to where the point where we can enter this information that we just laid out into the hydraulic calculations to verify the pipe sizing. In this situation with the tank and pump, it's pretty much in a single level place. It's going to be all 1 inch and work fine. But we might not necessarily know that in a different situation. Maybe we're using a different water supply like the city main. But we'll get into all that stuff in other videos. That's it for this. I know I carried on some things in too much detail or maybe not enough detail. Trying to just go over things many different ways, and there's much more videos in the course and much more detail on specific items if you are struggling with any particular concepts. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next video. All right, so here we are. 8 weeks of content comes down to designing in that one video. Really is we just designed the sprinkler system, but that's only part of getting a permit. That's what our ultimate objective here is, to produce a document that we can obtain a permit with. So this week's assignment, you could produce a PDF document, lay out your sprinklers, and connect the dots on it, just like we did in our video, working through the checklist. And this new checklist is available in this week's course for you to download. So we will just be, we worked through those first 3 items on there this week. Feel free to send in your PDF for review or post it in the community. And yeah, that's it, I guess, basically. Seems like there was something else I wanted to mention, but I can't remember. So if you are having trouble getting to this point, it's not a problem. Let us know. Let us help you. And so we're, moving back and forth through this process, red lines to the next checklist, helping us, the red lines helping us move through the process to the next checklist. And just a reminder, Saturday at 10 Pacific, we are having our 3rd installment of our SketchUp series. For those of you not familiar, SketchUp is a 3D program. It's free, and we recommend people play around with it. It's one of the easier 3D modeling programs out there, and that's what we do our details with at mCAD for fire sprinklers. So it's a lot of fun to play around with. And we will also, at the end, will have opportunities for questions, both related to that workshop or related to the course. And also, so next week we are going to continue on. I think I mentioned it in that video. We're going to start dimensioning the piping. I believe that's the next thing on our checklist. So look forward to seeing you guys next week for that. And now, if you have questions, please, I'm going to see if I can. Remember, we are not playing a video like we normally do in between, so I got to remember which buttons to press. Switch that over, and then I'll stop my screen share. And it looks like we are good to go. How is everybody doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I have a question, Colby.
Yeah.
You said these videos are recorded. Are they available? So for the ones that I missed, am I able to go back and watch them?
Yes, absolutely. And so that would be in the Kajabi library. And if you need help getting into Kajabi, we can help you figure that out. Have you made it in there at all? Do you know?
Is Kajabi the thing that I'm doing the autonomy forum through?
Yes, they're using. Well, actually, the forum at Autonomy is through Circle, but
Okay.
the course at Autonomy is also built on Kajabi. But our Kajabi is. Have you been able to get to like where you can download any of the DWGs or PDFs?
I have not looked at that yet, so
Okay,
I'll need
no
to do that.
problem. I think initially we had you go in there and create the account because I believe you're in the system. And I know that there can be trouble. Actually, this is a good thing to bring up. There can sometimes be trouble if you have multiple like courses in Kajabi, it getting mixed up between each one. And one workaround that we know works well to resolve that, if it is a hiccup like that, is to open an incognito tab and sign in that tab, and it won't have any of the saved cookie information that's throwing it off.
Okay. And that's an option I select within Kajabi.
I'm sorry, what was that?
That incognito. You're talking about within the browser. Just go to incognito.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
got you. Okay.
Let's let's see. Looks like we got a question in the chat here too. And I don't want to stifle you though. Michael, do you have any more questions?
No, it
Before
was
we
interesting to watch. It's like you say, it's all very similar across the different CAD programs. And I was trained in DraftSight, but that was way, way, way back. And so more recently, I've had more experience, of course, with LibreCAD. But again, you have very similar ways of doing the same things in all of these programs.
Right. Excellent. That's great to hear. Okay, cool. Well, let's see. This question I have from Owen, it looks like he might be having some technical difficulties with his camera at the moment and microphone possibly. It's that we got here.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes. Hey, Owen, how are you doing?
Good, good. Yeah. Like my question is written, how far down can those heads be in that drop ceiling, I'll call it? We'd call that a coffered ceiling, I think.
Right.
How far down can they be from the main ceiling?
Well, it really, um, as long as we have the floor area covered from that lower ceiling, it's there. You know, there may be a number that it matters. That's an interesting question.
Wouldn't the volume of the standard ceiling delay the activation of the heads as it fills with hot air?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I'm curious what you would have to say. I would think that it would have to be pretty big for that to come into play, like
Yeah,
a
I can't
high up
remember.
ceiling. Is there a volume measurement for that you're referring to? That makes sense.
Yeah, I
I could
can't
see
remember.
that.
It's been a long time since I've plan checked.
Yeah, I could see that more coming into play a lot. Like, for example, like in a commercial building, you would have, you know, you have like a high entryway with weird ceilings in a lot of these buildings as they're trying to make, you know, like we were working on a theater recently and it has all these wacky ceiling elevation changes and stuff just because they're trying to have a certain look with the architecture, but it makes these weird elevations. And we definitely have to in that situation. So now it completely makes sense what you're saying. I've just never thought about it from coming into play in this situation in residential, but I suppose it does. And we should probably look at that at some time. It's a great question. Now I'm curious.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Owen.
So you're saying that you had to, in this theater situation, you had to calculate the volumes above the heads where the hot air could collect before triggering them.
Well, I
Yeah.
didn't even, I mean, yes, but I don't even think about it in those areas. It's just so obvious to me that, yeah, we have to put heads up there. But there is theoretically, I know, a code where there's a number reference. I didn't mean to cut you off, Owen.
No, that's fine. I was, like I said, it's been, 20 years since I did plan checking for residential systems, and I can't remember what that number is. I know we had to calculate the volume of skylights to determine if a head needs to go in it.
Right.
I guess that's similar to a closet.
Yeah, all of
Kind of
these
upside down.
situations have specific rules associated with them. And that's kind of why, you know, they don't have anything about that in 13D, do they? It's only in 13 that they have information about skylights, as far as I am aware. But basically, the reason we start. Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying, I think it was unique to Redondo Beach where I worked. The square footage of a skylight.
Gotcha. That would come into play for sure in 13. But basically, the whole point of 13D, for the most part, is kind of to simplify those types of things to keep the cost down. A lot of times, just 13D and 13R are more about life safety and encouraging people to, incentivizing them to have it at all, because there's a lot of people who don't want sprinkler systems in their home, and so they just do a lot of things to make it as easy as possible. So they kind of simplify a lot of those things in 13D.
Well, I'm thinking of like a beam. When you put a head in a beam, the beam can only be 4 inches down from the ceiling, with the sprinkler deflector coming in another inch or so, and that would be the max distance could be from the ceiling. So there's no delay in activation. It's almost like that coffered ceiling around the edges. Treat it like a beam in a way, but I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, so you think we need sprinklers up in the high ceiling instead?
That's what I was wondering.
Or maybe both. It's funny. So I actually, in the beta course, put it in the higher area, and this time when I did it, I decided to move it out to the to the outer edge, because I thought, oh, you know, those sprinklers in that high area, they're probably hitting that edge and potentially being blocked. So, and you know, I didn't think about it much beyond that. So this is fantastic, Owen.
Oh, I'll look it up and get back to you.
Yeah, that's great.
I guess you could put a single one in the top and not worry about the square footage as much, because you could say, well, we've got the other two in the lower part.
Right. The only problem, again, coming back from the video, is I guarantee you they're going to have a ceiling fan right in the middle of it. And
Yeah, right.
the ceiling fan you have to be 3 feet from the center of. That is a rule. We probably should throw that into the model, because that does come up on houses pretty often. I should have thrown a fan in one of the rooms. That would have been good practice. we do have a note on our template there in one of the boxes about with a circle representing the 3 feet, and you just drop on a ceiling fan, and then with the note that has the code reference to be 3 feet from the center of a ceiling fan. But yeah, that's all good stuff. That's
Do
interesting.
you make a little ring around it like the one you made around the oven in that
That's
case?
right. That's right. Exactly. That's right. And that is in the template in one of those magenta rectangles where all those notes were.
Mm.
Yeah, very good. So how's CAD students in Mississippi, is it? Is that right?
Well, right.
Oh,
Yes.
they're on winter break, aren't they?
That's correct. Yeah, we let out last Wednesday. That's what I was saying. I was so disoriented by being not on my schedule of going to work on Thursday last week. I just didn't check my email, didn't look at my calendar, didn't do anything. But yes, they went out on last Wednesday. So I'm on Christmas break.
Gotcha. Some probably nice quiet time away from the teenagers.
Well, yes, but then, like I say, I get all the other diversions that pop up that are less predictable than those during the regular school period.
Gotcha. Right. Get used to a schedule.
Right. This has been
Well,
a spanner in the works for me getting used to a schedule.
well, I'm very interested in learning more about the stuff you're doing with the open source, BIM type software that you were talking about trying to figure out. I think that's really cool, and looking forward to hearing more about that. Some good alternatives to Revit.
Well, I'm still working on my video series, trying to come up with some good drawings that sort of illustrate all the concepts of just basic mechanical CAD drafting through that. And then once I get that completed, then I'll be going into the BIM stuff more exclusively, trying to get my head around that better.
Gotcha. Do you have any idea at this point what like are you thinking of trying to go with like Blender BIM, or do you have any idea at this point what direction you're going to go?
My first one will be FreeCAD BIM, and
Okay.
because I don't have any background in Blender, so I was trained on DraftSight and SolidWorks, and that was back in 2011, 2012. And then I worked in chief architect professionally drawing house plans. And then I've used SketchUp. So I would build when I drew house plans in chief architect, I would build things that I needed to build in SketchUp, that I couldn't do in chief architect. And then eventually I moved from
Nice.
SketchUp to doing that kind of detail work in FreeCAD. And so I teach FreeCAD, LibreCAD, and
Okay.
AutoCAD. And I've dabbled a little bit with Sweet Home 3D, but that's an interior design kind of thing. It's a little bit like a toy compared to some of the other ones.
Interesting. Okay. I can't I can't remember what the second. Did you say FreeCAD and LibreCAD? Was that the other open source one? Oh no, did I lose you? Oh, there you are.
I'm back. I guess my connection dropped or something.
No worries. Um, so mainly you're using like FreeCAD, and then did you say LibreCAD after that?
I'm
For
teaching in I'm teaching in FreeCAD, LibreCAD, and AutoCAD.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm curious, like would you mind giving me like a brief rundown of the main differences between the three of those for people that don't know much about CAD?
Well, LibreCAD and AutoCAD are similar in that they're both 2D primary. Well, you can do 3D stuff in AutoCAD, but as it was originally conceived in the 80s, it was a 2D CAD program, like what you were showing us tonight. And LibreCAD is
Right.
like that as well. And so FreeCAD would be more like SolidWorks in that it's a 3D program that thinks in solids materials instead of meshes like like I guess you would get in something like, uh, old timey 3D, that's basically 2D that's just kind of built out into 3D. So yes, I would say FreeCAD is most analogous to SolidWorks, with the exception of the fact that because it is free and open source and anybody can build whatever they want in it, you have all these weird workbenches that some guy out in the middle of nowhere just builds, and you can download that. Like there's a guitar workbench if you want to build your own guitar, and there's workbenches for dealing in fabrics if you're doing fashion design. So it has all these. Now I don't know how well any of those work. I mean, they may, I'm sure to varying degrees they work, but anyway, so it has some peculiarities due to the free and open source nature of it. The community will build
Okay, so
whatever
do you
they
use
they
any of
want
those? Cool. Do you use any
No,
of
I
those
haven't. I
workbenches at all
mostly
then?
just not really. I just use the main parametric, the SolidWorks type workbench where you just right.
That's very interesting. That's what I was going to
And I
ask,
don't
actually.
have
That was
any.
my next question. It's a parametric modeler, is how you would describe it, right?
very
That's
much
cool.
like
That's a
um
lot.
very much like SolidWorks in that you draw your 2D thing and then you pad it up in Z after that. So you draw a 2D drawing, you pad it up in Z. Then if you need to draw something else and pocket it down, you can do that.
Got you. Okay. Interesting. I have never used SolidWorks or anything, so that's very interesting. I want kind of curious. I want to play around with it some, the FreeCAD. Now I'm like familiar in SketchUp. Kind of sounds like what you're describing in SketchUp of using the push pull tool. Is that similar process? Sounds like.
Yes. Yes, that's very similar. In fact, SketchUp is similar to SolidWorks. It's also a parametric modeler.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. All right. I know that they make
And
like some BIM extensions for SketchUp and stuff, but you'd have to have like the pro model, I guess, to run those.
right.
Not the
Well,
free.
the whole parametric idea is that instead of the way I think of it is that there's drafting in which you're using tools like compasses and straight edges and so on. And when you draft, you're drawing from a specific place to another specific place, and then you can't change it after the fact. You've already done it. Whereas in sketching, you're doing it like you're doing it freehand, quick and dirty. And then if you have a parametric modeler, you can sketch something up quick and dirty freehand, and then you set parameters on it that tighten up and constrain that sketch until it becomes like a draft. It becomes fixed as
Hmm.
you continue to add parameters and constrain the sketch. And then after you've fully constrained your sketch, it turns green to mean that okay, you've got this all locked down now. And then you can give it height, you can give it Z, or subtract away Z, whatever.
Okay. That sounds really interesting. Thank you for that, Michael. That's very cool. Hmm. Well, if you don't mind, I'm also curious about was it LibreCAD you said? That's very similar to AutoCAD. Like at one time, I can't remember if we mentioned LibreCAD um, on the week one. I know at one point when I was giving that presentation, that stemmed out of the week one presentation came out of a webinar that I first did ever coming up with this idea. And I know at least back then I talked about LibreCAD, but I had problems with it. Like you can open my template that we use in this course, but the biggest problem I had with it is just the text, like making it look the way, like getting the fonts to load into it. But I'm just curious what, besides the text issues that I had, how else does it, like what other kind of limitations does it have compared to like AutoCAD?
The primary shortcoming of LibreCAD is that it can't handle DWG files.
Hmm.
So, and uh, going beyond that, it does not, let's see, AutoCAD 22, which is I think the last one we've been using, does not export to an early enough DXF file type for LibreCAD to open it. I think LibreCAD only handles a DXF up to like maybe it's 2007 and then or 2006 or something, and current AutoCAD only exports to maybe a DXF version 2013. So I don't know why somebody
Gotcha.
can't go write something for LibreCAD to update that to at least 2013 or whatever. But it may be that Autodesk does this with intent, like
Right.
whatever, whatever LibreCAD is up to. Okay, go to the next year, so they can't, I don't know.
Yeah, I
That's
could
the
totally see them doing that.
all right.
That's
But in
super
any case,
interesting.
the LibreCAD for me is a good tool because I just need to teach the basics of 2D CAD to my students with it in a way that they can use it at home if they have a computer. Whereas if they only learn AutoCAD and then they graduate from high school and they don't go either to a college program or goes to work for a company that has it, they won't be able to keep a hand in it. Whereas if they are comfortable, I mean, they could go learn LibreCAD and it wouldn't be that hard, but a lot of people don't do that. It's you sort of feel like it's almost like a Dumbo's feather kind of thing. He thought he needed the feather to fly, but so I just go ahead and teach them in LibreCAD. And another thing that's good about it for students is that it doesn't have dynamic input like AutoCAD has. So in AutoCAD, you start your line and then you drag it and then you type in the length and the angle. But in LibreCAD, you have to pre-select whether it's going to be a horizontal line, a vertical line, an angle line, or a 2-point line. And then you have to
Hmm.
know where your point starts and where it ends. So you kind of have to think in advance before you do a line, which is good for brand new CAD operators because it makes them think before they act.
Interesting. Okay, very cool. Yeah,
My
so
students are always making mistakes when they do dynamic input because they think that they may have left their grid snaps turned on and forgotten about them. And then at the zoom level they're at, they think they're clicking on the end of one line, but in reality they might be clicking on a grid snap immediately next to it that they can't see at that zoom level. So then you have to zoom way in, and then you see, oh, I missed it. So I tell them all the time, do not click, and think you've hit the right point. Make sure that you're either typing in the angle or the length that you want, or that you've got enough of your snaps turned off so that you're not snapping to something inadvertently that you weren't attempting to snap onto.
right.
And I even tell them that using a mouse in that manner is very much like riflery. The marksmanship. You have to first take in a breath, exhale halfway, wait for your heart to beat, and then gently squeeze the trigger, to hit a distant target with a rifle. And you kind of have to do the same thing with the mouse if you want to get your right, if you want to do it by hand as opposed to typing in the exact coordinates you want.
Right. Yeah, and that's interesting. Yeah, and of course, when you're typing it in, it's precise, just clearly, right?
Right.
That's good. Very interesting. I'm curious what kind of projects do you have them working on? Just drawing like mechanical drafting projects? Like I remember when I was in
The
high
first
school in drafting, we learned on a board and drew these different 3D shapes, in different perspectives and whatnot. Are they doing this type of thing?
Right. And when I started out, I'm in my 6th year now. When I started out, I had to teach them on the board because that was part of the state of Mississippi's required curriculum. But they dropped that
Hmm.
part, a few years ago, which I was very glad of because
Oh, really?
uh, I was just because to know which pencil lead to pick up, to know which hardness of lead and which gauge of lead each line requires is very easy. It would have been easy in the 50s and 60s and 70s when you had to do it constantly every day to get, you always knew which pencil because you used it every day and it was constantly reinforced. But when it's something that you have to learn by rote memory once and try to retain it, 6 months or a year later, when you're after you've moved on to CAD programs and now you're taking the standardized test, they
Mm.
all just terror, it was awful.
No,
So I
I
was
can
really
see
glad.
that.
Yeah, I was really glad to get, at least in a CAD program, you can set it and forget it. And, it'll always be, you always have the right line. So that was one thing. But so the first year, it's a 2-year course. The first year I teach them, um, and I'll start them off in LibreCAD doing mechanical widgets, different orthographic and isometric views of mechanical widgets. I have them do some 2-point, 1-point, and 3-point perspective drawings, the various types of things like that. And then they'll go in and do those same widgets in FreeCAD in 3D. And then
Oh,
usually
okay.
after they've gotten through that, then I'll start them at the end of the first year on AutoCAD, which is basically just to redo the same drawings that they did in LibreCAD, but now do them in AutoCAD with slightly different techniques.
Okay.
And the only reason I do that is because their standardized test which comes in the second part of the second year is the AutoCAD certified user test. So I just want them to have enough exposure to AutoCAD so that they can do pretty well in that test. And then in the second year, they just draw a house plan and in AutoCAD. And
Cool.
then if we have a little bit of time at the end of the year, we'll go back into FreeCAD and do some fun stuff in that, get into spreadsheets and things.
Okay, very cool. Man, I mean, so the house plan is that are they just all drawing the same one, or are they drawing their own idea, or how is that?
They're drawing the same plan. A friend of mine who went to high school with me has a building company in Mobile, Alabama, where I live, and so he gave me some of his plans. And so I've found out that it's not a very good idea to allow too much creativity in the students because they don't understand the fundamentals enough yet to know what, and everything just goes haywire immediately. So I tried that once.
Gotcha. Well, that sounds very cool, man. I wish I would have loved to have had a CAD course like that when I was in high school. I mean, I feel like I would for the times in the '90s. It was pretty good. We were working on 386 computers on DOS with AutoCAD 10. But I'm super thankful for that experience. What we
Mhm.
had at the moment, that was even old. I remember AutoCAD 14 came out while I was in high school, and somebody had a pirated copy. It was amazing. They're like, "Oh, look, you have Windows buttons."
But you were all command line when you were taking the
Yeah,
class?
yep,
Mhm.
yep. Yeah, you basically to be fast, you had to memorize all of the commands you were using, and there was no like single letter. You had to type out the full command. But that was the fastest
Mm.
way to do anything is to type them out completely and hit to go through the menu. It did have, like this rudimentary menu system, but it just it took forever to go through it. I mean, it's kind of similar like on, the most basic file settings and that are at the top of your CAD program. They're listed with the drop downs. Those all ultimately go back to the DOS drop downs. That's where they came from. They were very similar to that, but they were it was just so slow, much slower. Every time you hovered over one, it's not like it just instantly popped down. You had to wait a few seconds. It's like by the time you go out these 3 or 4 levels, you could have already typed it and moved on. So
Right.
a different world back then.
Sure.
Hey, Kobe, I sent you the picture on a error message I'm getting with IntelliCAD and any PDF. Can
Okay,
you address
yeah.
that here, or do you want to do it another time?
No, yeah, I did see that, and I thank you for reminding me. So we can talk about it in more detail if you like, and I could probably help you maybe get the notifications turned off. But it's not a big deal at all. What it
Okay.
is related to is those two programs are not syncing with your Microsoft cloud storage, And it's just basically a scam for Microsoft to get you to pay them more money to store those files on the cloud, which you don't need to do.
Well, thank you for saving me some money.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But yeah,
All
if
right,
that gets too annoying, let me know, and I'll try to help you get that figured out so we can get that turned off.
Yeah, it's no big deal. Just when I open up my file to all my files for this class, that error message shows the file.
Yeah, it just means that
That's
they're
all.
not syncing with the cloud storage.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. And thank you for reminding me about that. I meant to address it. I did get your picture. Thank you
All
for
right.
sending that.
Tonight was a good class. Well, they're all good classes, but this one was a good one. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was a little bit long, a lot of information, but I'm trying to present it as many different ways, reiterate that there's several different methods to do every step. None of them are necessarily wrong. It's just when you're first learning, you kind of learn one and maybe that works for you for a while and you can get a lot of things done with this template without, and then kind of just progress as you learn.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of curious, Michael, if you have any ideas on a lot of the people who are taking this have zero CAD experience. I guess it sounds like you haven't seen the stuff that I have inside the course that's not in the lectures. But what kind of stuff could I add in your experience with these students who've coming to you with nothing to help them come from, like a zero experience point to the basics, because it's kind of like an overwhelming amount of stuff. I tried to on the first lecture we showed the 3 PDFs that is basically I'm trying to get people to focus on this is all you need to learn, kind of ignore all these other functions for now and just focus on these. It's just learning these is not that much, but all these other things, someday if you are, you may learn those if you want to, but it's not necessarily those types of things. Anyway, do you have any input or ideas in those regards?
Well, so do you have you have PDFs for your students to go in and reproduce?
Well, okay, I'm talking about, I have these 3 PDF handouts that one is like all the commands that we basically use. There's like maybe 10, all you need, and it's a description, like exactly, what the name of the command is, how you use it. Then I have another handout is about object snaps and just the ones that I have commonly set for fire sprinklers, like I was talking about, endpoint, midpoint, and center. But then I also commonly use perpendicular and nearest. And so I have kind of explanations about that. And then what was the other? There's one more worksheet. What was it, Monica? I'm forgetting. I'm going out of a blank. But the idea, oh yes, that's it. The other is a single page, just how to draw lines with precision. And so it's just specifically about the line command, about things like using ortho and using object snaps to be able to draw lines with precision, just different methods that are available. So these 3 handouts are kind of like the basis of this is the core stuff that you need to have to be able to go through this course. And I pretty much have individual videos. Go ahead, I'm sorry. There's a little bit of a lag delay here.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I, for the most part, have a short, like 3-minute video on each of those items that's in the course that you can refer to when you're going through the sheet trying to learn those things. But go ahead.
Well, the main thing that I do in my classes is just have the students draw, draw, draw. So I've got all of these objects for them to just go through. And of course, early on, they're making all kinds of mistakes. And I may have told you about this expression I use when they get something slightly wrong. I'll say, "Oh, now everybody's going to die," and I explain to them that if you were to design a turbofan engine for an airplane, and you had something just slightly out of place, then the engine at 15,000 RPM or whatever they turn at would explode, and the plane would fall out of the sky and everybody would die. And that's my way of saying everything has to be perfectly precise. So they hear that expression quite a bit in the first semester, especially.
That's
But
fantastic. That's a great story to emphasize that point. That would really make someone remember that. I love that. That's great.
You're welcome to use it.
Okay.
But anyway, then I just have all of these drawings for them to go draw. And, they don't think it's the most fun thing to do in the world, I guess. But if they want to go into this field, then they're going to have to draw a lot.
Right. So I guess one possibility for a simpler version, kind of from hearing what you said, and I think I have heard this from some people too, is maybe like we had some, before we get to the level we're starting at the course even, we had some practice files that were really just, you open it up and all there is like, say, one bedroom, and we're drawing a line from one corner to the other, and that's all that there is, and then maybe taking a sprinkler and putting it on the center. But I think I maybe need to build some very simple kind of practice files like that, where you're just only practicing one or maybe two commands in that exercise. Does that kind of sound logical to you for the people who have really no experience?
Right. I mean, you've got, in my case, I have students, my classes are, they're quite long because we only have 4 blocks during the day. The fourth of which is a planning block, except sometimes it's not for me because I've had some 30-year students now. But, so if you think about the whole school day is basically divided into 4 blocks. So these are upwards of an hour long, and it's 5 days a week for 2 years. So that's not exactly the same thing that you're doing. So it would have to be something where you had students in their own time, working on things if they wanted to or something.
Yeah,
but,
like maybe
yes, I think
that could be like a free thing before you get into the course to help you get ready or something.
Right. For example, if you were making videos online that were freely available and people could run through those, and then you could get into the particulars of fire sprinkler design and some of the more nuanced aspects of CAD, maybe.
Right. Yeah, that's great stuff. I appreciate all the input there, Michael. I don't. I hope this was a long lesson for everybody. I apologize for the time, and I appreciate everybody putting up with me. And it was a lot of information. I probably should try and kind of wrap it up for the folks that are listening for the replay. But I really appreciate all that. It was great information. We'll have to keep the conversation going on, Michael. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about your future projects that you've been talking about, seeing how they go, and if there's anything I can do to help you. I'm also actually, I'll invite you to check out another autonomy graduate from season 9, the season that I graduated from. Daphne Romani is an architect from Meridian, Idaho, isn't it, Monica? Anyway, Idaho. And she has a course. It's, I believe it's 4-week, and it's immediately following my course, but I'm going to be helping her with that. And I'm sure she would love it if you came check that out. It's related to architecture. Might be of interest to you and your to some degree with the CAD stuff, but it's a much shorter course. I believe it's only 4 weeks. Is that right? Anyway, we'll have more details on the last week. We're going to have a plug for it. But it's a.
You put me in touch with her, and I spoke with her. We spoke about an hour, and
oh,
but
nice.
Yeah, but I didn't I didn't know that she was going to be putting out a course, so I'll look for that when it becomes available.
Okay, yeah, excellent. I'm sure she would love to hear some input. What she is trying to do with that course is for like architecture students that come out of school. There's kind of like a gap in knowledge that you come out of. What you're kind of expected to know when you come work for a firm, but they didn't really teach you in architecture school, and she's trying to kind of help gap that information with her course. So it's pretty interesting.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it's great stuff. All right. Well,
okay. Well, thank you so much, Colby.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Really appreciate it. Excellent.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, everyone that came tonight and participated, and those who didn't even, everyone that's here, that's really appreciate it. So we will looking forward to seeing you guys again next week. And remember the topic, will continue on with our pre-calc checklist, and we will start that. We'll be starting with dimensioning our pipe. So look forward to seeing you guys next week. And again, if anybody needs assistance, please reach out. Don't hesitate. We want to help you. And, there's probably someone else that could be stuck at the same place you are. So please let us know, and you may be helping someone else as well. All right, everyone, have a good evening. Monica, if you want to go ahead and end it. Thanks, guys.